The envelope arrived on a Wednesday morning, tucked beneath a stack of routine mail outside Captain Elena Brooks' front door. It had no return address, no stamp from any recognizable courier, just her name, typed neatly across the front. Inside was a single photograph and 6 handwritten words. Ask your husband about October 14th. Elena stared at the picture until her coffee turned cold. The photograph showed her husband, Nathan, standing beside a woman she had never seen before. They weren't holding hands. They weren't kissing. They simply stood outside a small lakeside cabin, both looking directly at the camera as if they had expected someone to take the picture. On the back of the photograph was one date, October 14th. Nothing else. Elena wasn't someone who jumped to conclusions. Years of military leadership had trained her to separate evidence from emotion. A single photo proved almost nothing, but something about it felt deliberate. Someone wanted her to ask questions. Someone wanted her marriage to crack open. She slipped the photograph back into the envelope just as Nathan stepped into the kitchen. "Morning," he said with his usual easy smile. "You're up early, I couldn't sleep." He poured himself coffee without noticing the envelope resting beside her plate. "You have training today." "Briefings all morning," he nodded. "I'll probably work late too." Normally, that sentence wouldn't have meant anything. Today, it echoed. She studied him carefully. Nathan looked exactly as he always had during their 6 years of marriage. Relaxed posture, neatly pressed shirt, wedding ring catching the morning light. If he was hiding something, he wasn't showing it. "You okay?" he asked. She forced a small smile. "Just thinking about the future." He leaned over and kissed her forehead. "We've got plenty of time for that." He left 20 minutes later. Only after she heard his car disappear down the street did Elena remove the photograph again. For the first time in years, she didn't know whether to trust her instincts or her heart. The Central Defense Academy occupied nearly 300 acres outside the city. Its brick buildings, quiet courtyards, and disciplined routines had become Elena's second home. Unlike many officers, she never raised her voice unless necessary. People listened because she stayed calm. Cadets admired her. Senior officers respected her. Even those who disagreed with her decisions admitted she was fair. During the morning leadership seminar, Lieutenant Mira Lawson caught Elena staring absent-mindedly at the projector. "You've read the same paragraph 4 times, Mira whispered. Elena blinked. "Have I?" "You never lose focus." "I'm human." Barely. That earned the first genuine smile of the day. After class, Mira followed her into the hallway. "Something's wrong." "It's personal." I figured. Elena hesitated. Mira wasn't just a colleague. She had become one of Elena's closest friends over the past 4 years. Still, the envelope felt too strange to explain aloud. "I'm probably overthinking something." "You've never overthought anything in your life." Elena laughed softly. "You'd be surprised." Before Mira could ask another question, Elena's phone vibrated. Unknown number. She answered. Captain Brooks. Silence. Then a distorted voice. "Don't ignore October 14th." The line disconnected. Elena stood frozen. Mira frowned. Who was that? Wrong number. It was a lie, and she hated lying. That evening, Elena parked outside her home, but remained in the car for nearly 10 minutes. She replayed the call repeatedly. Someone knew her name. Someone knew enough to send the photograph. Someone wanted her to investigate. The question was why. She finally walked inside. Nathan was making dinner. "You made it." "Traffic," he smiled. "I tried that new pasta recipe. It smells good." They ate together, talked about ordinary things, neighbors, weather, his engineering project, her upcoming leadership evaluation. Every sentence felt strangely rehearsed. Not because Nathan sounded dishonest, because Elena kept wondering whether every answer concealed another question. Halfway through dinner she spoke casually. "What were you doing last October?" He looked up. "Last October?" "Yeah," he shrugged. "Working." "Mostly." "Anything memorable?" Nathan smiled. "You mean besides helping you repaint the guest room?" "I mean around the middle of October." His fork paused, only for a fraction of a second. "So specific." I was just thinking about how fast the year's gone. He relaxed again. Oh, I don't remember anything unusual, Elena nodded. So, just work, pretty much, she smiled back. But inside, something shifted. Because October 14th had not been ordinary. She remembered exactly where she had been. She had spent 3 days leading a remote disaster response training exercise. Nathan had stayed home alone. Later that night, while Nathan slept, Elena quietly opened the household filing cabinet. Not because she expected to find evidence, because she wanted facts. She checked bank statements, insurance records, tax documents. Everything appeared normal, until she reached a folder she had never seen before. Inside was a receipt, a cashier's receipt, for a cabin rental, paid in cash, date October 14. Her pulse quickened. The location matched the background in the photograph. Before she could read further, footsteps creaked behind her. Nathan stood in the hallway. What are you doing? Elena slowly closed the folder, looking for the warranty information. At midnight, I couldn't sleep. He watched her for a long moment, then smiled. I'll help tomorrow. He walked back upstairs, but Elena noticed something she had never seen before. His smile hadn't reached his eyes. The next afternoon, Elena drove to the address printed on the receipt. The cabin sat beside a quiet lake nearly 2 hours outside the city. It looked abandoned. Weathered wood, locked windows, a faded porch swing moving gently in the breeze. She walked around the property. Nothing. No signs of recent visitors. Then she noticed fresh tire tracks behind the cabin. Someone had been there recently. A voice interrupted her. You shouldn't be here. Elena turned. An elderly groundskeeper stood several yards away, carrying a toolbox. I'm sorry, she said politely. I was looking for someone. He studied her carefully. You came because of the man. What man? The one who rented this place last year. Her heartbeat accelerated. You remember him? I remember everyone. Was he alone? The old man hesitated, then nodded slowly. No, he reached into his pocket, pulled out an old key, and looked directly into Elena's eyes. I've been waiting for someone to ask about that day. He handed her the key. Everything you're looking for, he glanced toward the locked cabin, is still inside. Elena stood motionless, the old brass key resting in her palm. The groundskeeper didn't look nervous. He looked relieved. You've been waiting for me? She asked. The elderly man gave a slow nod. I didn't know your name, only that eventually, someone would come looking. Elena's military instincts immediately took over. Facts first, emotions later. Who rented the cabin? He signed the paperwork as Nathan Brooks. Her stomach tightened. And the woman in the photograph, I never learned her name. You saw them together. I saw them arrive together. The answer hit harder than Elena expected. Not because it proved betrayal, because it made the photograph real. She looked toward the quiet cabin. What happened here? The old man sighed. I promised I wouldn't open the place again unless someone asked the right questions. What questions? He looked directly at her. What really happened that day? He unlocked the front door and stepped aside. You should see it for yourself. The cabin smelled of cedar and dust. Sunlight slipped through the old curtains, illuminating furniture that looked untouched for months. Nothing appeared unusual. No romantic photographs. No forgotten clothing. No signs that anyone had lived there. Elena walked slowly through the living room, noticing the careful order of everything. Whoever had left had cleaned thoroughly, almost too thoroughly. The groundskeeper watched quietly. I wasn't allowed to remove anything from the desk. She turned. A small wooden writing desk stood near the window. One drawer was locked. The brass key fit perfectly. Inside lay only 3 items: a leather notebook, a sealed envelope, and a silver pendant shaped like a compass. The envelope simply read, "For whoever comes after me." Elena carefully opened it. Inside was a single typed page. If you're reading this, someone has already decided that appearances are more powerful than truth. Before you believe what you've been shown, finish reading everything. Half of the story belongs to the eyes. The other half belongs to what the eyes never saw. There was no signature, only today's date, from nearly a year earlier. Elena frowned. This doesn't make sense. The groundskeeper shook his head. Nothing about that day made sense. The notebook contained appointment dates, addresses, and short observations. Most entries were ordinary. Met at 2:15, documents delivered, call postponed. But one page stopped Elena immediately. October 14th. The handwriting read, she finally agreed to tell the truth. If anything happens after today, the documents must reach the right person. Trust no one who profits from silence. No names, no explanation, no indication of who had written it. Only another folded note tucked between the pages. Inside was a storage locker receipt. Rental period, 1 year. Expiration, tomorrow. Elena stared at it. One day. Whoever planned this had expected someone to discover the cabin just before the locker expired. That wasn't luck. It was timing. Driving back toward the city, Elena couldn't stop replaying everything. Nathan had definitely visited the cabin. But why? Nothing inside suggested romance. Nothing suggested an affair. Instead, everything pointed toward some kind of secret arrangement. Her phone buzzed. Nathan. She answered through the car speakers. Hey, where are you? Running errands, you sound tired. Long day, he hesitated. Listen, my company scheduled an emergency meeting tonight. What time? Probably until 9. I thought your project wrapped up yesterday. It did. This is something new. There was another pause. Yet his voice sounded normal. Almost too normal. I'll see you tonight. Drive safely. The call ended. Elena glanced at the dashboard clock. 4:17 p.m. Something urged her not to go home. Instead, she drove toward Nathan's office. She parked across the street. At 5:02 p.m., employees began leaving the building. At 5:11 p.m., Nathan walked out, alone. He didn't go back inside. He didn't meet coworkers. He got into his car and drove away. No emergency meeting. Elena waited 10 seconds before following him. Nathan drove across town to a quiet neighborhood Elena had never visited. He parked outside a modest blue house. A woman opened the front door before he even knocked. The same woman from the photograph. Elena's hands tightened around the steering wheel. Nathan stepped inside. The door closed. She remained in her car. 1 minute, 5 minutes, 15. Every logical explanation seemed to disappear. She wasn't angry. Not yet. She wanted facts. After nearly 40 minutes, Nathan came back outside. The woman handed him a medium-sized cardboard box. They exchanged a few quiet words. Then, to Elena's surprise, the woman hugged him. Not romantically, not awkwardly. It looked like two people saying goodbye after carrying a heavy burden. Nathan left. The woman remained on the porch, wiping tears from her face. Elena waited until Nathan drove away before walking toward the house. The woman answered after the second knock. Can I help you? Elena held up the photograph. I think we need to talk. The woman's expression changed instantly. You found it. You know what this is. I hoped you never would. I'm Elena Brooks. The woman closed her eyes. So, you're his wife? Yes, I've been dreading this day. Then tell me the truth. The woman looked past Elena, scanning the quiet street. Not here. Her name was Claire Donovan. She lived alone. The house was simple, warm, and filled with books. Nothing about it suggested secrecy. Claire placed 2 cups of tea on the table. Neither woman touched them. I suppose you think Nathan and I had an affair. I don't know what to think. Claire nodded slowly. That's fair. She reached into a cabinet and removed a thick file folder. I've wanted to tell you everything for months. Then why didn't you? Because Nathan begged me not to. Elena felt another wave of confusion. Why? He said you were already carrying enough responsibility. Claire slid the folder across the table. Everything started because of my brother. Inside were dozens of financial records, legal correspondence, property deeds, insurance documents. Elena quickly realized they all connected to the same company, a charitable housing foundation. She looked up. I don't understand. My brother founded it and Nathan? He discovered someone was stealing from it. Elena blinked. Stealing? Millions, Claire continued quietly. My brother tried exposing the fraud. What happened? He disappeared. Silence settled across the room. Not dead. Not officially. Simply gone. No evidence, Claire whispered. No answers, and Nathan got involved. He was the only person willing to help without expecting anything in return. Elena looked through more documents. The dates matched. October 14th. The cabin. Private meetings. Hidden paperwork. Every clue suddenly pointed toward something completely different. But one question still remained. If this is true, she looked directly at Claire. Why hide it from me? Claire's eyes filled with regret. Because someone warned Nathan that the closer you got to this investigation, she swallowed hard, the more danger you'd be in. That evening Elena returned home before Nathan. She placed the photograph, the notebook, the storage locker receipt, and the cabin envelope neatly across the dining table. No accusations, no assumptions, only evidence. At exactly 8:47 p.m., Nathan walked through the front door carrying the cardboard box Elena had seen earlier. He stopped immediately. His face lost all color. You went to the cabin, it wasn't a question. Elena stood. Yes, Nathan slowly placed the box on the floor. I was hoping you'd never find it. You lied to me. I know. You visited another woman. I did. You hid everything. I had to. Her voice remained steady. No, you chose to. Nathan looked at the documents, then closed his eyes. When I tell you everything, he spoke barely above a whisper. You're going to realize the lie wasn't the worst thing I kept from you. Before Elena could respond, someone knocked on the front door. 3 slow knocks. Nathan froze. His expression shifted from guilt to fear. He whispered only 4 words. They found us first. 3 slow knocks echoed through the house. No one moved. Nathan's eyes remained fixed on the front door. They found us first, he repeated, barely above a whisper. Elena had seen fear before on exhausted cadets, disaster survivors, and people facing impossible decisions. This was different. Nathan wasn't afraid for himself. He was afraid for her. Another knock. Steady, patient. Elena instinctively scanned the room. There were no signs of forced entry, no shouting outside. No urgency, just someone who believed they would eventually be invited in. She stepped toward the door. Nathan caught her wrist. Please, she looked at him. For once, he said, trust me before you judge me. She studied his face. For 6 years, she had believed she could read every expression he made. Tonight, she realized she had only been reading the parts he allowed her to see. A third knock came. Nathan took a slow breath and opened the door. Standing on the porch was a woman in her 60s, dressed in a gray coat despite the warm evening. She carried a weathered leather briefcase. I'm sorry to come unannounced, she said calmly. My name is Margaret Hale. She looked at Elena. You must be Captain Brooks. Margaret nodded. Good. She stepped inside. I've spent 11 months trying to find the safest way to meet you. They sat around the dining table. The photograph, notebook, and documents remained between them. Margaret carefully opened her briefcase. Inside were neatly organized folders tied with blue ribbon. I served for nearly 30 years as an independent financial auditor, she explained. After retiring, I volunteered with the Harbor Light Housing Foundation, Claire's brother's organization. Elena leaned forward. You knew him? Margaret smiled sadly. He was one of the most honest people I've ever met. What happened to him? He uncovered something he wasn't supposed to. Margaret spread several papers across the table. They were financial reports, bank transfers, board meeting minutes. Everything pointed to one conclusion. For years, someone inside the foundation had quietly diverted donations into a network of shell companies. The fraud had been hidden behind perfectly legal paperwork. It wasn't one thief, Margaret said. It was a group, a small group. Nathan finally spoke. They knew I had found inconsistencies. Elena looked at him. So that's why you became involved, he nodded. I designed software for non-profit accounting systems. Claire's brother asked me to review 1 year's financial records, and you found the missing money. I found enough to know something was wrong, Margaret continued. The day after he confronted the board, she paused. He disappeared. Elena's military training had taught her that information meant nothing without verification. She examined every page carefully. Dates matched. Signatures matched. Transactions formed a clear pattern. Nothing looked fabricated. "So why involve Nathan?" she asked. Margaret answered, "Because your husband refused to let the evidence disappear." Nathan looked down. "I copied everything before anyone realized what I'd found. The cabin, our meeting place, the woman in the photograph, Claire, the storage locker, the only place we believed would stay unnoticed." Elena closed her eyes briefly. Every suspicious clue now had a simple explanation. The lies had not protected Nathan. They had been meant to protect her. But one question still lingered. "You should have told me." Nathan nodded immediately. "I know, no excuses, there aren't any." He looked directly into her eyes. "I convinced myself that keeping you uninvolved was the safest choice. You made that choice alone." "I did, and that hurt more than anything else." He didn't argue, because he knew she was right. Early the next morning, Elena drove to the storage facility. This time Nathan and Margaret accompanied her. Locker 214 sat at the end of a quiet hallway. The rental expired in less than 4 hours. Nathan unlocked it. Inside were 3 waterproof containers. The first contained complete financial records. The second held handwritten journals kept by Claire's brother during his investigation. The third contained something unexpected, a sealed video message. It was addressed simply, "If you're watching this, I couldn't finish what I started." Margaret found a small portable media player in the box. The screen flickered to life. A man in his 40s appeared. He looked tired but composed. "My name is Daniel Donovan, Claire's brother. If these files have reached you, then either I succeeded," he managed a faint smile, "or I ran out of time." He explained how he had uncovered years of financial manipulation. He described gathering evidence quietly, fearing that confronting the wrong people too early would destroy it all. Then he looked directly into the camera. "If you're Captain Elena Brooks." She froze. "I'm sorry." Nathan glanced at her. Daniel continued. "Nathan spoke about you often. He said you believe truth matters more than comfort." "I hope he's right." The recording ended with one final request. "Don't seek revenge, seek accountability." The screen went black. Silence filled the storage room. Over the following weeks, Margaret worked with independent legal authorities responsible for nonprofit oversight. The evidence was submitted through proper channels. Because the documentation was complete, investigators were able to trace the missing funds. Several board members resigned before formal hearings began. Others faced civil and financial consequences. The diverted money was recovered gradually and returned to the foundation. The housing projects that had stalled for years finally resumed. Families who had waited for affordable homes began receiving keys. No dramatic arrests, no cinematic confrontations, just careful, patient justice. Exactly the kind that lasted. At home, however, the hardest work had only begun. One evening, Ellen and Nathan sat on the back porch watching the sun disappear behind the trees. Neither spoke for several minutes. Finally, Nathan broke the silence. "I keep thinking about that envelope." "So do I. If whoever sent it hadn't done that, I might never have known." He nodded. "I almost lost you anyway." Elena looked at him quietly. "You didn't almost lose me because of the investigation." He swallowed. "You almost lost me because you stopped trusting me with the truth." He lowered his head. "I know. I understand why you were afraid. I don't understand why you decided I couldn't stand beside you." He didn't answer immediately. "When people care about someone," he said softly, "they sometimes confuse protection with control." Elena considered his words. "In my profession," she replied, "the strongest teams survive because everyone knows the mission." She reached for his hand. "You made me your wife." A pause. "But you left me out of the mission." A tear escaped before Nathan could wipe it away. "I'm sorry." She believed him. Not because apologies erase pain, but because genuine change begins with owning it. Several months later, Harbor Light held a quiet reopening ceremony for its newest neighborhood. Claire invited Elena and Nathan. Children played in freshly planted parks. Families unpacked boxes into homes they had never imagined they could afford. Margaret stood nearby, smiling as volunteers handed out flowers. Claire approached Elena. "I almost hated that anonymous envelope." Elena looked at her. "You know who sent it?" Claire nodded. "My brother scheduled it before he disappeared." Elena blinked. "He arranged for it to be mailed 1 year later. He wrote that if the truth hadn't surfaced by then." Claire smiled gently. "Someone deserved to start asking questions." Elena looked toward the families laughing outside their new homes. Daniel had understood something profound. Truth didn't always arrive when people wanted it. Sometimes it arrived only when people were finally ready to carry it. That evening, back at home, Elena placed the original photograph into a small wooden keepsake box. Nathan watched from across the room. "You kept it." "I did. I thought you'd throw it away." She smiled. "For a while, I hated what I believed it represented. Now it reminds me of something else." "What?" She looked at him with the calm strength that had always defined her. "Evidence tells us what happened." She slipped her hand into his. "But only honesty tells us why." Outside, the evening breeze rustled the trees as the last light faded across the quiet neighborhood. Some battles are won with strength. The ones that matter most are won with truth.